Hello everybody and welcome to another episode, a broadcast if you will, of GameGuru MAX live broadcast number 81. So this week I'd like to show you a little bit of something called the visual logic system. And before that, just want to make sure that everybody can hear me fine. So let's have a quick look. We can hear you. Great, wonderful. I have the live chat currently off screen so I can read it, but you can. But later on, I'm happy to answer some of your questions. If you're lucky enough to be part of the live chat, just post your questions, stick a question mark at the beginning, in the middle, or the end. And then later on, I'll scroll through, find some worthy questions and answer them. And all the questions I don't get to, I will absolutely sort out in the GameGuru forums later on, along with a recording of this broadcast. Okay. Let's get cracking. I'll run the software, or rather, switch to the software, if you could see this. And just to sort of give you a pre-warning, we are now streaming to multiple verticals. So I have chats all over the place. So for now, and forgive me, I'll just be looking at the chats on the YouTube broadcast, and then as I get more familiar with a technology we're using called Restream, then I'll be able to answer questions across all the different broadcasts that are going live right now. So just going to check my other screen. I have many screens, of course, and this is actually the screen which tells me not only you can hear me, but you can see me, which is great, which is what I want to know, so I can move on. So we'll just get past the welcome screen. I'm going to launch this level, because what I want to show you, as I said, is the logic system. Now, when everyone hears the word logic, they get a little bit nervous because it's about scripting and programming and coding. Well, I'm trying to avoid that for the majority of GameGuru MAX users. So what I'm going to show you is how to create some logic without actually doing any scripting. And you may have seen a version of this in previous broadcasts, but we've made some visual updates and we continue to work on it. So I'm going to create a little scene in this terrain. So drop down a building like so, and let's see, what shall we do with our building? Let's go inside it, because I want to show you, let's say I want to show you a switch and a light, right? So you want to drop in a switch and a light, connect them together, and the logic will be when you move the switch, the light comes on and off. So I'm going to go and look for switches. It's a nice switch, we'll put that one there. And of course we want a light, so we pop in a light like so. All very well and good, but how do these two communicate with each other? Well, that's where the visual logic system comes in, because if I select this filter, it actually now creates a little blue outline on any object in your level that has the capability of performing logic. So a switch can be on and off, a light can be illuminated or not illuminated, and all I need to do is drag and connect those two objects together. And in the middle, you'll actually see that there is a node which allows you to configure what that relationship is. But rather than bore you with all that, I'm going to run the level. Now I think because I've not put a start marker down, it's pretty much going to be potluck where my player ends up. I think I'm going to end up on the roof, but that's fine. We can drop in a player start marker after this, because I want to show you a different kind of logic connection. So as I suspected, we're on the roof. So where's the door? It's around here. So we go in here, and you can see the light is on, the switch is here, so we can do this. And as you can see, we've connected the switch and the light. And if you've been lucky enough to watch previous broadcasts, that's nothing new. You've seen that before. But here's another one I may not have demonstrated. So we'll put our start marker in so we don't start on the roof this time. And now we're going to put in a trigger zone. So that's where if the player runs out this door and then through here, they'll enter this area, and that's a trigger. So I can do some logic when the player runs through that zone. So if I drop in a character, let's say we put in Billy Joe. Now currently, Billy Joe would be behind this building. He wouldn't be able to see you as you run through this door. But let's say for whatever reason, for the purposes of my gameplay, I trigger something. I want this character to come running after me if I run through this zone. And again, it's the same idea. You've got Anything that's sort of logic has this lovely little blue. We're not finalised the visuals. We've certainly currently got the artist looking at any way to improve this, but I do like the idea that it's blue. It feels like this is sort of, it's like the UI. It shows the logic aspects. So I can select the marker and connect it to this, and by default, of course, is when you run here, what would you expect? Well, you'd expect the character to be alerted, but not only that, it's built in that the character will go and have a look at the zone and see what's going on right there. So if I run the software again, and we start hopefully inside the building this time because we've added our start marker inside, the character won't be able to see us initially because there's a huge wall between us, which is fine. And then of course when we run outside, the character should be able to figure out my presence. So I can switch this, that still works, that's great. And again, we're not being hassled by a character, but as soon as we do that and we wait, you can see the character here has now been alerted to my presence. So the idea is the character has, is quite happily just sitting here in an idle pose, and as soon as you went to the, it did a pathfinding system to walk around the building, and it would have walked all the way around and actually gone to this zone and had a bit of a look around. But as soon as the character got line of sight with the player, then the character took out the weapon and started shooting, which is a part of this, the character attack behavior, which is now getting pretty sophisticated. This behavior can do a lot of different things based on all of these options that you can set below, which continues to evolve as we iterate the AI of not only soldiers and bystanders, but things like zombies as well. And the last thing I added was this, the flank target. We're making use of our new drop down within the dynamic lure system, so you can instruct a character to just stay back during sort of a combat situation. They can get close, so they really just dart towards you and get as close as is reasonable to start shooting. And then wide flank, which is they won't necessarily charge towards you, they'll sort of creep round to the left or to the right and trying to get you from the sides. And if you've got multiple soldiers, it's good to actually spread them out. So some soldiers will flank, other ones will dart straight towards you, and it creates a great combat situation. And again, this is all a product of the iteration we're currently doing. And I'll be able to demonstrate that during February, where you see that combat AI evolve, and probably a few additional options and maybe a few other items down here in how they conduct themselves during a combat situation. So that's a little glimpse at it. There's other things that we're going to do, like place text in the logic system. So like, for example, here, it would actually tell you what you can do when you drag from that sphere. It'll also, you see this relationship, there'll actually be a text here, which actually tells you what the relationship, without you having to actually click on that item in order to set the relationship. And of course, as you move further away, that text would either get smaller or fade away. So when you're looking at it from a large area, you're not seeing lots of logic overloading the display. So that's the bit what we're working on right now. Now also I wanted to demonstrate, I can demonstrate because as you can perhaps see with the grass, it's still in progress. On a Friday build, for those lucky enough to be a pre-order user, you'll actually get updated grass and updated trees as well. The cool thing about the update is the grass will match the texture of the terrain. So you see it's really light here, or let's say it's snowy or icy, then the grass will actually match that, such that, you see as we zoom out, and it looks like the grass is sort of materializing out of nowhere. When the grass color and the terrain texture match up, so they're almost the same color, you won't see that transition. And that's what happens in modern games. You don't get grass everywhere, you only get grass near to where the camera is or where the player is. And the idea is, as you get further away, it's the terrain texture that hides that transition. And at that distance, you don't really appreciate the individual grass blades. It's only really up close when you're here and you see them moving about and you're moving amongst them. So that's what I wanted to show you. And on, as I say, on Friday, there's a few other little treats. There's a lot of team members working on different sections and they all converge into the Friday build. But I wanted to demonstrate the improvements to the logic system because that's the bit I've been working on. A couple of other things I've been doing as well, but they weren't really in a state to demonstrate, such as lining up the different weapons that enemies can hold, so they're actually pointing straight at the player instead of off to one side, and again improving some of the behaviours that go on whilst they're conducting their combat strategy. So let's see if we can find some worthy questions. I'm looking at the clock. Once again, I've hit that 11-minute mark. What am I talking about? Well, I usually do a little bit of a ramble about what I've been doing internal development-wise. And then when I finish that, I look at the clock, and it's always 11 minutes into the broadcast. I switch over to looking at the questions. It's getting a little uncanny, but maybe I'm just well programmed now to stop after 11 minutes of waffle. So let's look for some questions, and anything goes, really. It could be about what I've talked about, or it could be anything to do with Max, or life, the universe, and everything in general. First question. This is from Zorgo33. When will the day-night cycle system be added back, and as a working feature, question mark, if it will? It will. We actually have an engine now which can move the sun all the way around the planet and back where it started. At the moment you can set times of day, like morning, afternoon and evening for your particular level, but you're asking about a dynamic environment system, so a level could start off in the morning, and if you wait long enough, your game time will roll forward and you end up at night, and then day, then night, and all the rest of it. That won't be in the March early access release, but we do have it on our roadmap to be implemented thereafter. It may even, you may have to wait as long as the RPG, where maybe the day-night cycle kind of lends itself more powerfully to a story or a narrative. So we don't actually have a specific time when that will be implemented, but it's definitely on our list because we have the technology. We just need to implement the front end so you can get to control, for example, how fast the game time moves as compared to real time, say human time, let's say. Another question is further down. This is from Argent Arts, 3 question marks. Are there any plans to add any form of LOD or auto-LOD for entities to Max? Sure. There's a couple of things. We already have a LOD system in, which can be used, but it's not connected up yet. But the reason we've not already connected it up is we have, we think, an even better idea, which isn't just about the geometry, because that's all really LOD is, reducing the number of polygons you can draw for an object as it gets further in the distance, but extending this idea to textures as well. And believe it or not, textures are as much a crime performer as the geometry. If you've got a lot of bandwidth being used up by large detailed textures, that can also affect your performance. And so we have a few ideas in order to render the objects with what's called a virtual texture system. And again, that's after March, but it's something that when we're working on that, we may find that we got a better LOD system to implement than the one we currently got. So we're hesitant to hook it up if there's a much better system out there that ultimately replaces it. So yes, it's definitely on the cards. It's going to be critical for levels that have tens of thousands of objects. So yeah, watch this space for an updated version of what we're going to introduce to do what LOD currently does and has done in the past. Here's a question from Marcos Cordiero. Hopefully I got your surname right. When we have dry foliage floor painting, 3 question marks. Dry foliage floor painting. Well, there are 32 materials, and some of those materials that you can paint the terrain with do look like twigs and bits of dirt and moss and stuff. I suppose that would be categorized as foliage on the floor. So you can just go into, in fact I can show you that one, hopefully we don't lose too much. Go into terrain editing, select this one, which is painting the floor, and scroll down here, and you can see all the different materials you can paint your floor with, and you'll find some dry foliage texture in one of these selections. So please definitely check that out. And we have some grass types as well, which we can blend nicely with some of those textures as well. So this Friday should be a good version to play around with that and what we've been working on that side of things. Next question, this is from Loretta M. Will there be female arms with weapons on launch? Not for the March one, but it's definitely imminent, because we have we try to be making sure we're like equally balanced. We've now got female zombies. We've got male and females carrying multiple weapon types. We just basically ran out of time to do the female arms and hands / gloves for the weapons running around. But I think it's probably the last big visual thing. So I don't think I've mentioned this before. Might have mentioned it in last Wednesday's broadcast, but February now is about debugging. It's about polishing. Basically, all the functionality is in place now, and it's a case of making sure that it's solid and it's stable and it does what it needs to do, and you can actually make games with this product at the end of it. And so basically we've frozen adding new things, so we've given ourselves the time to do the polish and the bug fixing, etc. But after March, all bets are off and we can continue to add things, and it could be that's one of the things right at the top, because I agree it is missing right now. Okay, next question under is, here's a question from DLS Lee. Is there any chance we can create and animate our own fish and attach to the fish behaviours like sharks, etc.? Well, the fish is a generic behaviour, so go check out the fish models and see what animations they have. They'll have animations like idle and move, and I think move fast or run, and die. I think there's a death animation. If you can create your own shark model and provide animations and configure those in the model importer, and then attach the fish behavior to that, your shark should swim around underwater much like the current fish selections do in the default library. So I don't see there's any huge obstacle, aside from the fact you're going to be a 3D modeler and know how to animate and then get that model in a format that model importer is happy with and you can import. But if you are okay with that side of things, yes, you can have your sharks swimming around in the water, no problem. Here's a question from Web Samodelon, sorry about that, and it's in Russian, so I can't read Russian at the moment, sorry. If someone could translate and get that in before we run out of time, that would be awesome. Here's a question from Duke Dudson. Looking forward to the release, it's coming along so good, thank you very much. Here's a question from the Sleeping Warrior. Question, are we able to have different background music for different levels? You certainly can. There's a zone called Ambience. Just drop that into your level and inside an area where the start marker is, and you start playing the level music. You've also can select overall global ambient music to replace what the biome provides. So if you're in the desert, you'll hear a desert sound. If you're in a forest, you'll hear Tweety birds and general forest sound. But you can override that loop sound effect with anything you want. But then, as I said, you've got these ambient zones where you can change the music during the level if you want to. So you've got good control over that. Here's a question from GT Zeros. Can I make games of different classifications? Classifications, I'm going to interpret that as different genres. For the March early access release, it will just be shooter gameplay. But shortly after, we're going to head for the RPG genre, and thereafter the puzzle genre, which covers quite a good breadth of different game styles that you can create in GameGuru MAX. And of course, you can mix those together, so you can have elements of different genres all merged into the game that you want to create. And then probably further along, we get into the other kinds of things, like you may want vehicles, or you may want to fly, or there's some sort of edge cases that are a subgenre, but we'll get to that down the road. For now, we're focusing on shooter, RPG, and puzzle. In that order. Question, this is from a Retro Game Blog. When, if at all, we are going to get the annoying pause when picking up a gun or ammo removed? Yeah, your annoyance may vary. I'm alright, it's only the split second, but I do see it, and you're right, it does need attending to. It will be attended to in February. I've classified it as a glitch/bug, and there's no reason to have that, certainly no reason to have that during a gameplay's runtime. It's probably got something to do with preparing resources during the game, when those resources ought to have been prepared before the game starts. So don't worry too much about that. I'm pretty sure it's on the issues board. I remember seeing it somewhere, and it will be destroyed for February, and you'll have a version where that disappears. And there's other optimizations that are also been listed on the issues board, and we'll deal with those as well that relate to performance and the occasional stutter you might find at certain points in the gameplay. Right, looking at the clock, we're 20 minutes in. I usually don't continue reading questions after 20 minutes just to prevent these broadcasts getting too long. But what I usually do is pick questions from people who haven't asked one before, and the rest, as I promised, I will answer in the Game Guru forums later on, in fact, right after this broadcast. So who hasn't asked a question before? I think Marcos, have you asked one? Yes. Lustanzia Mapping, you haven't asked a question today. Is there any chance to have cliffs or rocks near the water and some type of water, ocean, lakes, waterfalls and rivers? There are some assets that are part of the 1,000 objects we're providing with the first early access version of GameGuru MAX. So you do have cliff objects and textures and rocks, so you can sprinkle them around the edges of your water that you create in your level. But I think I know where you're going with the things like lakes and waterfalls and rivers. You know, you can sort of create those by just curving out bits of terrain. But what we want to do is do those justice. So, you know, fast flowing rivers, really impressive waterfalls, stagnant lakes in the same level as a violent ocean on the edge of the beach. So that's for another time. That's probably going to happen once we've tackled more higher priority items. But certainly for the merch version, you can create bodies of water and you can have them riding up against cliffs, and you can add rocks around the edges of those waters. Just check out the object library and you should be able to find what you need, at least to get you started. And isn't that the question? This is from CGUA. Will there be any climbing animations, and what graphics card are you currently using? Technically that's two questions, but I'm happy to answer them as one. Climbing animations, it's a first person shooter creator, so you won't see the player, so there is no animations as such for the player, and there are no animations of climbing for the enemies, because the enemies will not climb in the early access version that we're releasing in March. And what graphics card are you currently using? I'm using I think it's a GTX 1080. So it's a little bit above the minimum spec, which we've set as the GTX 970, which is an old card. I think it's a 5-year-old card that runs at about 9,000 score on Passmark, and my graphics card clocks in a little bit higher than that. I think it's about 14,000. So just check out on Passmark with your graphics card, and if you're around the 9,000 score mark, then you'll be all right for running GameGuru MAX. But I think I'm running I think it's an NVIDIA 1080 right now. So thanks for all the rest of the questions, and apologies for those I have deliberately skipped, but I'm absolutely going to answer them in the forums later on. I hope you've enjoyed this broadcast. I'm also going to answer the questions that may have been asked on Twitch as well, so you'll find those in the Game Guru forums later. I'll be back next Wednesday at 4 p.m. GMT to reveal more about what we've been adding. You'll probably see the last of the features go in and have been tested, so probably more new things for you to look at next Wednesday. So until then, thanks for listening. I've enjoyed it. I hope you have too. I'll speak to you all next week. So until then, goodbye.